Okay, so I've just come back from watching the new Ghostbusters movie, Frozen Empire, and it wasn't great, which is a shame because I was really excited about this one. The trailer made it look awesome, but unfortunately, most of the good stuff was actually in the trailer. In fact, I would say that there are some scenes in the trailer that didn't even make the final cut of the movie. On the whole, this movie is fine. It's fine, but coming from a Ghostbusters fan who went to see a Ghostbusters movie, it needs to be better than fine. It needs to be amazing. It needs to be great, not fine. There were some moments in the film that I actually enjoyed, but they were very few and far between. Now, let me get one thing straight. I really did like Afterlife. I thought Afterlife was amazing, and I thought it really did deliver some really good fanfare. It gave a solid story, even if they were recycling an old villain. It gave a solid story, and we finally got to have a good send-off to say goodbye to Harold Ramis and Egon as a character. It was a very fitting send-off to the actor and the character, and even though we only got 5 minutes of the Ghostbusters at the end of the movie, and I remember at the time being a little bit upset that we only got 5 minutes to see the original Ghostbusters, I think in hindsight 5 minutes was probably enough, and it was a very good send-off to the franchise. I think maybe after seeing this film, I think maybe that's where they should have just ended it as a kind of trilogy. Just ended it there with Ghostbusters 1, 2 and then Afterlife, and that's it. Unfortunately, they made this one. That's not to say everything in this movie was bad, but most of it was. Now, in this movie, we primarily follow the Spengler family and Paul Rudd's character Gary, who is now trying to play the father role to Phoebe, played by McKenna Grace, and Trevor, played by Finn Wolfhard. And of course, we have the return of the mother character, played by Carrie Coon. And the family are now like the new Ghostbusters, and they're going out there busting ghosts with the Ecto-1. Whilst the original Ghostbusters are in a kind of semi-retirement, apart from Winston, who is kind of running the company of the Ghostbusters. And this is what the movie is kind of focusing on, this family dynamic. This is kind of the heart of the movie. There are other storylines going on as well at the same time, and personally I think there are too many different storylines going on, and I think it makes the movie feel a little bit overcrowded. I think they should have maybe picked one or two storylines and just followed those instead of the silly amount that we've got going. And I do see what the movie is going for with the family dynamic, but it just falls flat for me, totally flat on its face. Now, once again, we see the return of McKenna Grace, who plays Phoebe, Egon's granddaughter, and to be fair to the actress, she's really good in this movie. She is. She's really, really good. Unfortunately, because of the plot points of the movie, because of the story, she's kind of sulking all the way through it, more or less, and the old family dynamic of this film, I just doesn't think works for the movie. It kind of slows it down and drags it. And in my opinion, every other character in this movie, or I should say most other characters in this movie, are kind of dull and uninteresting. And unfortunately, this includes even Paul Rudd, who is really doing his best. He really is. But I think it's just written so poorly that you cannot get invested in the characters. Even though you can tell they are doing the best, it's just not great. And I think it is just all down to the structure of the story and the way it is presented. And then we have Finn Wolfhard's character, who just feels really, really forced, like they had nothing for him to actually do. No real character development at all, apart from him kind of hunting down Slimer in the firehouse. And every time we get to see Slimer in a scene, we only see him for a few seconds or so. And I kind of wanted more. It left me wanting more, because Slimer's a big part of the Ghostbusters, and to only get him for a few seconds is kind of poor. But for a moment, let's just go back to Finn Wolfhard. I felt this way about him in the last movie. I felt like Finn Wolfhard was purely in this movie because of his Stranger Things role, his Stranger Things fame, and that's it. In my opinion, there's absolutely no reason for him to be in this movie. You could cut his scenes completely, and it would absolutely make no difference. One thing I did enjoy the most was the fact that Dan Aykroyd, who plays Ray, had more screen time in this movie. It was great to see him return, semi-retired, but still with loads of passion for ghostbusting, which kind of mirrors Dan Aykroyd's passion for the project as well. I think he is probably the only actor in the movie, apart from Winston, the only original actors who actually have a passion about it. As for Bill Murray, I'm not so sure, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And like I said, to actually watch Dan Aykroyd play Ray again in these scenes was kind of a pleasure, because you actually feel that he loves this role, and it comes across in the movie, and I'd say that was probably the most enjoyable part of this movie for me, just seeing him back as Ray and getting a longer screen time. There's a scene where he visits the library from the first movie and he bumps into the library ghost from the first movie. And this was also in the trailer, and I was excited to see what would actually go on. Unfortunately, the clip you get is exactly the same as in the trailer. It's that short. As soon as it happens, it's over and it's done. Just like with the Slimer clips as well. Even though you get a little bit more Slimer in this movie, you get a little bit more screen time with Slimer, you don't get much, and you didn't get much with the library ghost, which was a shame. And we also see the return of other characters from the original movies, like Winston, who is fine in this movie, and Janine, who is also fine. And it is actually a pleasure to see them back again. But I think we can all agree that the one character we were looking forward to seeing the most is Venkman. And in this movie, Bill Murray does get a little bit more screen time than in the last. Unfortunately, it's a little bit lackluster. In fact, his best bits were probably in the actual trailer, including the tall, dark and horny line. There's also some clips of Bill Murray in the trailer that didn't make the movie, which I thought was strange. I thought maybe they would have wanted to cram as much Bill Murray into the movie as possible, but they opted to leave some scenes out. I can't help but think that they didn't get the maximum usage out of Bill Murray's character when they had him on set. It's actually nice to see him suit up again like in the last movie, and he has a few funny quips here and there. And when I say funny, I don't mean like big belly laughs, nothing hilarious, but maybe it creates a little smile on your face, but nothing that really breaks out into a laugh, which is a shame. Venkman and Walter Peck actually come together in a scene, and I was hoping for this. I was hoping that these two characters would meet again in a scene. And I felt for the longest time in the movie it wasn't going to happen, and then it finally happened, and I was like, yes, here we go. Let's have a great comedy moment between these two characters who are, like feuding rivals in the first movie. And we got nothing. We got a few lines exchanged, and that was it. It was kind of like they were kind of rushing the end of the movie to just get it finished. That's how it felt watching it, and it was just a shame. It was just a shame because it was such a wasted opportunity. Such a wasted opportunity. And yeah, it was poor. As for the plot of the movie, I thought it was okay. Like I said before, there were quite a few plot lines going around here and there in the movie, which kind of dragged it down a little bit. But the main plot point with the main villain, Baraka, like coming into the city and freezing everything, I thought was a great plot point, and the trailer really got me excited for it, but I was expecting more from it. When in actual fact, we probably got about 15 minutes of this frozen empire at the end of the movie, and the rest of the movie was just, I wouldn't even say it was building up to it. It kind of just happened. There was nothing really exciting in between. Because I remember watching the trailer and thinking, that villain looks awesome. But he is so underused in the movie. He's just a villain who stands there and they just blast him and he just repels the blasts, and that's basically it. There's not much to the character of the villain at all. And like I said from the trailer, I was expecting a little bit more because he actually looks terrifying. But like I said, in the movie, he turns up at the end of the movie, and then the rest of the movie is purely runtime leading up to this point, which is normal, I guess, but it felt in parts a little bit boring and a little bit too drawn out. We also have Kumail Nanjiani, and I really do hope I pronounce that right.
I'm Kumail Nanjiani,
who plays Nadeem. Nadeem is a buffoon in this movie, basically, who unknowingly is the next in line of a long line of fire masters who are the protector of the orb that holds the main villain, Garaka, which he pawns at the beginning of the movie to Ray. His character gets a few laughs here and there, but really not many, and once again, I really do feel that this is a character they didn't need. There's also the introduction of a new female ghost who kind of has all these flames around her because she burned in a fire when she was alive, and she befriends Phoebe. But unknown to Phoebe, this ghost is also working for the main villain against her will. Now, this ghost feels like she has unfinished business, but she's not quite sure what it is, but she can manifest a single match in a matchbook. But every time she lights it, it just reappears in the matchbook, and she's not quite sure what it means. And she's not quite sure why this match is important. And as you all know, the main villain in this movie has freezing powers. He's freezing everything. He freezes New York. So it's just blindingly obvious that the ghost who befriends Phoebe, the girl ghost who is made of flames, is going to be the downfall of the main villain at the end of the movie. Which somehow turned out to be her unfinished business, which also made absolutely no sense. Like I said, I think there's just too many things going on at once in this movie. Instead of just concentrating on a couple of storylines, they're concentrating on far too many. And it just kind of makes the movie feel really long in parts and then too short in others. The main problem I have with this movie is that it's a Ghostbusters movie, and when you go to watch a Ghostbusters movie, in my mind, I want to see the Ghostbusters. And like I said, Afterlife, I enjoyed it for what it was, because it wasn't a group of new Ghostbusters. It was a group of kids who found the Ghostbusters equipment. And that was a good film. It was a solid film. But in this one, the Ghostbusters are back, kind of. I want to see the Ghostbusters. Unfortunately, you don't get to see much of them, apart from like Dan Aykroyd, like I said. But when they do finally come together at the end of the movie and they face off against the villain with the new cast as well, so you've got the new Ghostbusters and you've got the original ones. The original Ghostbusters, who I'm really excited to see in this movie, are kind of subdued straight away. Straight away, they're frozen by the enemy and they're kind of out of it. And then so are the new ones. And then, of course, it's Phoebe again who has to save the day, until a ghost friend does save the day, along with this fire master. So in the end, it wasn't even the Ghostbusters who actually did anything. I think the most that they did in this film to save the day was pull a switch together. When I think of a Ghostbusters movie, I want the Ghostbusters. I don't want to see the original Ghostbusters just subdued straight away, where they kind of repeat the last movie a little bit, where they shoot the proton packs and then they're knocked down for the count, and that's it. But then, of course, once again, they get back up and just blast away again and the problem's solved. That's not what I want from a Ghostbusters movie. I think when it comes down to it, what Ghostbusters fans want, and I'm not speaking for everybody, not everyone will agree with me on this, but I think what primarily most of the Ghostbusters fans want is to see Egon, Ray, Winston and Venkman. That's what they want to see. They want to see the original 4 Ghostbusters, because that's what Ghostbusters is all about. You've got a Dan Aykroyd who is very passionate about it. And then you've got Bill Murray, who, I'm sorry, I feel he just doesn't give a damn anymore about this franchise. I feel like he's just coming in to pay up a paycheck and then leave. It's great to see him back for what we get him back for, but in this movie, it was a little bit lackluster. I know I've seen Bill Murray in interviews leading up to this movie, and he seems very enthusiastic about this movie, and he's telling everyone it's great, but that's his job, isn't it, to do that? But I honestly feel like he's just not bothered anymore. It's a little bit like Harrison Ford with Star Wars. I don't think Bill Murray's truly that bothered. I think now it is probably just time to stop. I think they should have ended it with Afterlife. And when I say stop, I don't mean completely stop with Ghostbusters. I don't think the franchise is dead at all. I think now the next step is to totally restart, to totally reboot, and to actually bring us a film with the original 4 Ghostbusters, but not necessarily the original 4 actors. Bring us a new cast, new actors who can play Venkman, who can play Ray, who can play Winston, and who can play Egon. We've got so many stories that we could use. We've got the animated series. We've got a whole plethora of bad guys in that series that we could use in these movies, and we could make it great. We've got the comic books, and we could take elements of the comic books and put them into these movies. There's so many possibilities. There really are. Let's not let Hollywood mess it up once again. Let's hope and keep our fingers crossed that they really do a good job the next time they decide to revisit this franchise. I really do hope now that they leave it alone. That they just, say goodbye to this reimagination, including the original Ghostbusters here and there, and let's just start again. There's even a point at the end of the movie where the containment unit is breached and all the ghosts are escaping. All the ghosts that the Ghostbusters have caught throughout their lifetime, they're now escaping back into New York. And they kind of copy the first film with the pink streaks going across the sky. But when you're closer in the firehouse and you see the ghosts escaping, they're just kind of like basic white wraiths, if you will, just escaping through the floor. This would have been a perfect opportunity to show some of the classic ghosts from the animated series, from the comic books, from the actual film from the 80s, to show some of these ghosts that actually appeared in the film escaping again, even if it was just for a couple of seconds like we got with Slimer and we got with the librarian. But I felt, once again, it was just rushed at the end of the movie, and I get the impression they just said, let's just have some random basic ghosts flying out that really don't have any detail to them. They were just white basic copy and paste ghosts, and it was kind of disappointing seeing that once again, just like with Bill Murray and the original characters, the librarian ghost and Slimer. They've missed out on so many good opportunities. It really was a shame. So now I think it is time to actually recast the original 4 characters and bring us a proper Ghostbusters movie, something we can really get our teeth into and enjoy. None of this watered down nonsense that we've been getting over the last couple of years. Bring us something solid.
Something good. Something decent.
Something pure.
And when you do, I'll be the first one in line.